Okay, good evening and welcome to the Town of Eastchester Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for May. This is the May 10th, 2022 meeting. We begin our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I usually take this time to go over the ground rules, so I'll do that tonight. Firstly, we observe and are governed by Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Order, which essentially means that decisions here are made on motion and resolution. Generally, members and the public will speak when recognized by the chair. For new applications, just as a reminder, there are two items to that. Firstly, the matter is now, it's marked submitted and all the documents are public record. So when you come up, you can give a summary of your presentation. You're not under an obligation to read the entire application. As a matter of fact, it won't hurt you, won't help you. It's, again, a public record. And then the board will generally either make comments or have questions, and then as a general rule, there's a public hearing on the matter, and that's when the public will be allowed to speak on it. We will ask everyone who comes to speak on behalf of the public to give your name and address for the record, and all commentary will be coming from the podium. That sometimes becomes a problem because if you're speaking not near the podium, our stenographer can't get the minutes down later on when they're taking a review of the video. So we'll ask you to do that, and then the board will have an opportunity to make comments and questions. Now, any matter that's on first time, I know this is repetitive, but it's a term or condition of your application that it's not decided upon. So any items that are on tonight that are new matters, the earliest they will be decided upon will be June. That's important because if you're planning on action, particularly over the summer, we only have one meeting after that, which is July for resolution only. Our calendar is printed well in advance, and it's online, so you can get that in advance. We usually meet the second Tuesday of every month, excepting for August. Okay. One other item under some of the ground rules we go over, no new correspondence is accepted after the close of public hearings. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but during the pandemic era, when we were doing Zoom meetings, there were emails and things coming in after meetings because I guess it didn't feel like it was a meeting because we weren't in person, but they were not accepted then, and it's not accepted now. So no new correspondence accepted from the public after the close of the public hearing. Okay, so let's start with minutes. I make a motion to approve the minutes of the April 12, 2022 ZBA meeting. Is there a second to my motion?
A second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let me call the roll, and on the new matters, let's see if you are here. Please say so, and let me know if you're proceeding. The first item is 3 Southeast Way. Are you ready to proceed? Okay. Number 2, 6 D'Ambrosio Way. Mr. Yadasita, you ready to proceed? Okay. And the last item of new business is 88 Highland Avenue. Sorry, I didn't see that. You ready to proceed? Thank you. There's an adjourned matter which has been adjourned pending planning board review at 76 Station, 600 White Plains Road. Okay, on to our resolution calendar. Item number 1, I make a motion to approve application 2206, 8 Dogwood Drive. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Cahalan to the vote. Mr. Cahalan?
Yes.
Mr. Nerzia?
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
I vote yes. That application has been approved 4-0. Item number 2, with respect to application 22-084 Sprague Road, I make a motion to affirm the determination of the building inspector in the notice of denial dated February 17, 2022, and to deny the request for an area variance. Just as a note, a yes vote affirms the building inspector's interpretation and denies the area variance. If you're for the area variance, then it's a no vote. Is there a second to my motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Cahalan. Mr. Cahalan to the vote.
Yes.
Mr. Nerzia?
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
I vote yes. The application's been denied, 4-0. Number 3, I make a motion to approve application 2211, that's 7 Forbes Boulevard, subject to the condition that prior to the issuance of the building permit, the plans shall be subject to the final review and approval of the town's civil engineer consultant, most specifically with regard to stormwater management issues. Is there a second to my motion?
I'll second it.
Mr. Cahalan. To the vote, Mr. Cahalan?
Yes.
Mr. Nerzia?
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
I vote yes. That application's been approved 4-0. Number 4, I make a motion to deny application 12-12-106 Fisher Avenue. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Cahalan. To the vote?
I agree. Deny.
All right, so then that's a yes. Mr. Nerzia?
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
I vote yes. That application's been approved denied, 4-0. Last item on the resolution calendar. I make a motion to approve application -22-13, which is 61 Morgan Street, excuse me. I seem to sound like a auctioneer tonight. I'm in a bit of a hurry. Let me slow down. I'm sorry.
The Rangers aren't on tonight, Alan. So
Yes. Well, if they were on, we would take longer. Is there a second to my motion?
I will second that.
Okay. To the vote. Mr. Cahalan?
I will vote yes.
Mr. Nerzia?
Yes.
Mr. DeMarco?
Yes.
I vote yes. That application's been approved 4-0. Okay. On to new business. Item number 1, 22-14, 3 Southeast Way. If the applicant can come forward, state your name and address for the record, and give us anything you'd like in terms of your presentation.
Thank you.
You're
You
welcome.
guys hear me? Okay. I'm Michelle Gunn. I'm representing Design Lighting by Marks. We're a home improvement business that installs generator systems, is one of the things that we do. I did want to say good evening and address you guys about I was here a month ago, and I completely went for a snack, and I missed the meeting. I'm used to coming to meetings and being last and being here until about 9:30, so I apologize for, I think I fell apart a little bit when I came in.
I must have been speaking fast at that meeting as well, so
Yeah.
So,
That's what I was gonna
okay.
say. I can see why it goes so fast.
I'll speak slower for this one. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm here representing the company and the homeowner for a variance of about 1.98 feet. The generator is actually encroaching on the front of the property. It is on the very left of the property. It's screened from any neighbors on that side. Because of air conditioning units and other things that were in that proximity, we ended up having to put it, because of the code and it needs to breathe, because it's a little bit of a larger generator, we had no recourse other than to put it into the front a little bit. So I think we've submitted all the surveys and all the paperwork, if you have any questions.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll see if the board has any questions or comments. Mr. Cahalan?
None.
Mr. Nerzia?
No
Mr.
questions.
DeMarco?
Nothing.
I think your application was fairly straightforward. I don't have anything. I make a motion to open this matter to the public for a public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Would anyone from the public like to be heard on this application? Okay, seeing no one come forward, I make a motion to close the public hearing on this matter. Second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, because I have to. Mr. Cahalan, anything for questions or comments?
Nothing now.
Mr. Nerzia?
Nothing.
Mr. DeMarco?
Nothing.
I think your application was fairly straightforward and answered, to my satisfaction, the 5-part test. So I have a motion to adjourn this matter for resolution at the next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your application.
Okay, and you need me present at the next meeting also?
No, you do not need to appear.
Okay, all
Okay.
right, thank you.
Okay, item number 2, new business. 2218, this is 6 D'Ambrosio Way.
So it's to allow the little adjustment, yeah.
Good evening. My name is John Yanacito. I'm an architect, and I'm representing Mr. and Mrs. Vitrini, the owners of 6 D'Ambrosio Way. I'm also representing Mr. and Mrs. Gentile, the owners of 88 Highland Avenue. We're going to do this application together because it's basically the same. We're taking a portion of one property and transferring it to another property. So Mr. and Mrs. Vitrini are attempting to acquire a 1,560 square foot portion of the rear yard at 88 Highland Avenue in order to provide sufficient space to construct an in-ground swimming pool. So I'll come up there for a second. So here we have two properties. The pie-shaped property here is the D'Ambrosio Way property, and the rectangular property is the Highland Avenue property. And the triangular space that's highlighted in red here is the portion that will be conveyed from 88 Highland to 6 D'Ambrosio Way. Okay, so although this, the main purpose of this application is for a lot line adjustment and the construction of a swimming pool, both of these items do not require any review or approval from the zoning board. We're here tonight to request area variances for existing zoning compliance issues which were discovered from the zoning analysis. So if we look at 6 D'Ambrosio Way first, let me turn this over. And that shows the existing lot and the proposed lot with the highlighted area to be conveyed in yellow. So on this property, we're requesting two area variances. The first is for impervious surfaces. So the existing lot is currently non-conforming and exceeds the allowable coverage by 501 square feet, or 13%. The lot line adjustment will increase the size of the lot and therefore reduce the extent of nonconformance. So with the larger sized lot, the coverage will exceed the allowable by 160 square feet, or 3.8%. So in this particular property, we're reducing the extent of nonconformance from 13% to 3.8%. The second area variance on this property is for the driveway setback to the property line. So the existing setback to the property line is 0, and the required is 3. Deficiency of 3 feet or 100%. So we're asking for a 100% variance on the driveway setback from the side yard property line. Okay? We'll go back to Highland. So this shows the existing property and the proposed property on Highland, and the area to be conveyed, again, highlighted in yellow. This property, we're going to request one area variance, and that is also for impervious surfaces. So the existing lot is currently non-conforming and exceeds the allowable coverage by 1,357 square feet, or 37.3%. The lot line adjustment will decrease the size of the lot in this particular case and would increase the extent of nonconformance. So in order to avoid an increase to the extent of nonconformance, we're proposing to remove 264 square feet of existing impervious surfaces from this property. This decrease in coverage will reduce the extent of nonconformance to 35%. So the adjusted coverage on 88 Highland will exceed the allowable by 1,396 square feet, or 35%. So in this case, we're reducing the extent of nonconformance from 37.3 to 35%. So last week, we were informed by the planning department that there was a neighbor that was concerned about drainage and runoff from the property at 6 D'Ambrosio Way. So I just wanted to point out a few things that as part of this application, we will be installing a dry well for the legalization of the driveway, which is that little sliver of space between the driveway and the property line. We're also, as part of the pool, we're proposing no increase to the patio space on this property. The only increase from the pool addition will be the coping stone around the pool. And when we look at both properties together, we are proposing a reduction in the overall coverage to the area. We also received a memo from the town engineering consultant, who made a couple of recommendations based on the neighbors' concerns. And we're happy to include all of his recommendations as part of our permit approval for the pool if the variances are granted. Okay. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Iannacido, thank you for your presentation, and I appreciate you synthesizing the two. I think it makes it much more understandable. And as you probably noticed in one of our resolutions, there was an explicit condition to approval for stormwater management issues. I think in the past, in some of our applications, it's been implied, but in that, it was specific. And the reason why I'm making this comment is because if the public is going to be heard on this, I want to give the public an opportunity to speak on stormwater issues, but just so that the public understands that that is always a matter that is before the building department in terms of compliance with stormwater issues.
But just to be clear, a
Please.
couple of things. When it's been implied here before, it's only been implied because those things also require site plan approval, and then it's explicit.
Fair enough.
And then also, we have discretion to review stormwater management calculations to make sure they comply with no net increase for the 50-year storm event.
Correct.
In this case, we're actually asking the applicant to do something more than that. So the reason it's explicit here is because it's above and beyond what a typical building department review would be. It is requesting some additional provisions and additional review to ensure that there's not negative impacts to the adjacent properties.
Thank you, Mrs. Yulee.
Okay.
Okay. So, to the board for questions or comments. Let's start with Mr. Cahalan.
Yeah, the new drainage, is that going to be in the back or the front? I read someplace that it's going to be in the front yard.
So the consulting engineer, his recommendation is to put in additional dry well. Well, the dry well for the driveway would be closer to the front, because that's where we're going to have to
Of course.
drain.
But I'm concerned
The
about
one
the
for the
pool.
pool, so he's recommending putting additional dry wells for the drawdown process. Or if the pool fills up that 6 inches that are usually left at the, you're left with 6 inches of, from the top of the pool to the water line. So in case that does fill up to the coping, you can draw the pool down and then go into a dry well rather than just letting it loose onto the side of the property. So his recommendation is to have a driveway somewhere near the equipment where they can tie the hose in, draw down the pool, and then the capacity of that dry well needs to be the 6 inches times the length and width of the pool, and that would take that 6-inch volume and be able to hold that entirely into the pool, into the dry well. And then it would have an overflow towards the front of the house. So if it ever filled up to its maximum capacity, the overflow would pop up and drain out to the street versus draining out towards the back of the property.
What's the size of the pool again?
So we don't, I forget what I showed here. So I show a 16 by 32 pool on the drawings.
Okay.
That's probably the maximum size it can be with the setbacks, because if it would be any larger, we would have to come back to the board for additional variances, and we definitely do not want to do that.
Okay. That's it for now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cahalan. Mr. Nersia?
No questions.
DeMarco?
Nothing.
I don't have anything at the moment. I make a motion to open the public hearing on this matter. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Cahalan, all in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes.
in terms of clarification, are you opening public hearings for both applications simultaneously?
Thank you, Counselor.
I just wanted
Yes,
to clarify that.
I am. Thank you for clarifying that. So maybe I should remove to open the public hearing on both matters. Is there a second?
I'll second that, too.
Cahalan, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. So would anyone like to be heard on either of the two which have been combined for purposes of, I guess, conciseness, expediency, and understanding?
Yes, we would, Your Honor.
Please. I haven't been accused of being honorable in quite some time, so thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Please use the
The
microphone.
microphone, please.
Good evening. My name's Dan Reamer. I'm an attorney. I have a client here with me, Robert Tesoro. He will show you right now, Robert, if you want to show him. He has the property which is to the west of this proposed project.
If you could actually just have him identify himself for the record
Yes.
before he starts. Go ahead.
Tell them who you are first.
I'm Robert Tesoro. I live at 173 Beach Street, obviously in Eastchester, and my property is directly bordering this project
Okay.
on the west side. And I am topographically lower by several feet of this property. In general, I've been there 35 years. We have gotten water on occasion during some heavier storms.
Water table, the water
Yeah,
table.
and the water table, everyone knows the water table in Eastchester is notoriously high. My main concern is you're going to take away an absorbent area of ground and replace it with impervious surfaces in the form of a swimming pool, adding, thousands of gallons of chlorinated water. I'm going to see that on my property. If you remember the event late last summer that took down the retaining wall at Lake Isle, took out Leewood's pool, an event like that can occur again, and that's going to be like in my foundation. So that's my number one concern.
Have you had water in your lawn before?
Yeah, it's generally a wet area during even like the storm that we had the last Friday and Saturday. Yeah, so that is a damp area to begin with, and this is a huge concern for me.
You want to show them, if you can point to where we're talking about exactly.
Want to bring the mic over so he can...
Yeah, I think you're.
Yeah, but we need to get, our stenographer's going to have to get all of this, so if you can please, thank you.
I don't think it reaches.
Yes, I think it's. So your property is directly to the left of that yellow triangle there?
Yes, I would be,
You're
I would
right
be
there.
right here. Right in this area. And, approximately 5 feet or so lower than the projected project.
So is there a retaining wall there now?
There is no retaining wall, there's just a stone wall. It's porous.
Okay, if you'd like to proceed, thank you.
Let me talk a little bit here. So just a few comments to the board. Number one is, so this will still be non-conforming. It went from what I think it was 38% to 35%. That's not really significant of a change. If it was rejected at 38, to come back to 35 is insignificant. We're concerned. They're talking about a 3-foot drive. We don't really care about the driveway in the sense of flooding, except to say that you have a 3-foot difference in a driveway, which is going to consume a whole dry well. How many dry wells is the pool going to require? I believe that there was the engineering report that was supplied to the board. Unfortunately, I just got it by email, so I had it on my phone, and they said that if this pool is covered, that becomes impervious as well. So we have a lot of concerns about being downhill. That's the problem here, is that it's downhill. The pool is that area of land between my client's land and the applicant, that is the buffer. So what they're saying is, let's take the buffer out and put a pool in. We're going to ask that you go from 38 to 35. We think that's just not sufficient to retain a buffer into my client's property. Talking about drawdowns, saying that there are dry wells and then there's an overflow, and who's going to do that? If it's pouring out and the water's coming up, is someone going to come out and then start diverting water so that it doesn't flood my client, flood his land? I don't think that's a practical solution. So basically, that is the main concern. We don't have it's not a personal thing. It really only has to do with the idea that we are essentially downhill. If there's going to be any problem, we are going to be the ones who are going to experience that. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and your presentation. Would anyone else like to be heard on this application? Please.
Good evening. My name is Ryan McKeon. My wife is here, Lauren. We reside at 171 Beach Street, which is the neighbor of the gentleman who just spoke. My property is also immediately west to this pool. It is also 7 feet under this property. I have some serious concerns as to how this pool runoff will affect my property. My property does get water. And I think the attorney who just spoke makes an excellent point. We're talking about drawdown. That's all good and well when you go on a sunny Saturday and you're up to the coping. It's a little different when you're at September 1st of the storm of last year, or possibly the storms we just had this past weekend, for somebody to go out there and do that. I did review the engineer's report that was requested by the town, and to me, my reading of it seems like there are a lot of questions they have that have yet to be answered. And specifically as it refers to my property, number 3, an emergency overflow should be provided and directed away from the adjacent property to the west, which would be me, which appears to be topographically downgraded from the project site. We would recommend the applicant direct any emergency overflow towards the front yard, which I believe, Mr. Kalin, that was one of your concerns before. As far as, because I know you're taking these hand in hand, and I get why it goes, 88 Highland Avenue as it is already in violation of this town zoning code. It's got a shed right up against the fence of the property line, which is not 5 feet as required by an R5 district, which this falls in. So before we get to anything else, I mean, that's already existing. I just want to point that out to the board. I've reviewed the memorandums and letters that have been written by the applicant's architect. I understand this zoning board has certain 5-factor tests they need to apply. I would like to point out that I think the factors, are, especially as it goes to the D'Ambrosio Way application, are mixed in and out. They don't really address how it wouldn't change the character of the neighborhood. And by just using the conclusory terms of, oh, this has no characteristic change, is just wholly insufficient. I mean, courts around the state have found noise, change in character, a number of factors to consider. None of that is addressed in this whatsoever. Obviously, which has already been addressed at length tonight, is the environmental concern, which is the biggest impact of this. My other concern would be, just as we go to this town zoning code here, I understand that S4 of the town zoning regulations requires a minimum 4-foot fence around a pool. I don't see that in his plans. I have 2 young children. This gentleman here has a young grandchild. 169 has a daughter who's 3rd or 4th grade. There is no fence that blocks any kids from going back there.
Can I just want to interrupt for a minute. So I just want to make clear that this is, first of all, this is not an application for a pool, and so therefore the, something like the fences and the pool equipment and stuff, that is not required to be shown on the plans at this point. I mean, obviously, the lot line adjustment is something that will, if that occurs, will help the applicant have the ability to put in a pool, but something like fencing, that is something that's a New York State building code issue that would absolutely have to be complied with under any circumstances.
Understood, and I do understand I'm putting the horse somewhat before the cart here. These are just, when I'm looking at a global picture, some insufficiencies I see, and I do understand that process. Again, I do know this board is faced with, requiring certain factors to look at. The environmental one is obviously the biggest one here. And as far as 88 goes, I mean, the precedent you're setting there where you're going to ask for a 35% of a non-conforming use, I think that's something that needs to be considered by this board as well, because it impacts everything. My last point would be in light of the independent decision that was given by Keller Sessions to the board, I would ask that if, the board possibly adjourn this for further discussion, given, the discussion or the questions that, at least an independent consultant is telling this board needs to be answered. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and your presentation. And
I have a question.
yeah, before we get to that, I just want to see if anyone else from the public would like to be heard on this application. Okay, the public hearing is going to stay open. We're going to give Mr. Yanacino an opportunity to reply, and then the board has some comments and further into some of the comments.
I just wanted to clarify that 6 D'Ambrosio will only require a 3.8% variance for impervious surface. The 35% is for 88 Highland. As far as what the town engineer is asking for, if the concern is more for overflow during a major storm, if we could put linear drains around the perimeter of the coping, we can put linear drains along the property line to pick up any overflow that may come out of the pool, and take that to additional dry wells if that's, and we can talk to Joe Tremelli, the town engineer, to get that into his letter as a condition. And we can use the same dry wells, I guess, for the drawdown, because the drawdown will only happen when you're bringing the water level down. And if it does overflow, the same dry wells can be used, and the overflow can be towards the front of the house. The overflow is an automatic pop-up, so when it does reach its capacity, it will automatically pop up and overflow onto the street. And then all the other concerns about fencing and landscape screenage and noise, all of that will be addressed on the permit application for the pool, all the requirements that the town has for fencing and landscaping on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Yanacito. And we're going to go to the board in a moment, but I guess foreshadowing why I'm leaving the public hearing open on this. And actually, I generally don't like the public stealing my thunder, but we were going to, I'm considering leaving this open for that reason, that the recommendations here may be adopted in whole or in part by the applicant, which would be submitted and would allow the public to be heard on that further to mitigate that one issue. I'll further comment on that, but let's go back to the board. Mr. Cahalan?
No, I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. These are already non-conforming lots. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And both non-conforming lots, the coverage is being reduced.
I understood that, but I think the point that I wanted to make is everybody's screaming about nonconformity. They're already nonconforming.
Right.
And what you're doing is you're reducing one to 3%, and the other one, yeah, is it great? No, but it's better than adding.
Right, so the 3% one is reducing only because the property's getting larger.
No, I can do the math, John.
And
I
the other
know,
one,
I know
we're
when the
actually-
numerator and
The
denominator
other one, we're
change.
actually reducing coverage.
No, I understand, but I wanted to make the point that these are already non-conforming lots. That was my point.
Thank you, Mr. Cahalan. Mr. Nerzia?
No questions.
Mr. DeMarco?
No questions.
Okay. So as part of the five-part test, there was some commentary about character neighborhood and other things which I think can be, reasonable people can read it differently. But in terms of a detriment, that was my major concern. And I think in reading Mr. Tremelli's report, and your willingness to make modifications to the application, I think in conjunction with why I'm leaving the public hearing open on this, I think I'm going to give the applicant an opportunity to amend the application to include some, most, or all of these recommendations, and then we could further discuss it, and I think that may go a long way in addressing some of the issues.
So I think at this point, to do a full-scale drawing of a pool application for this particular application doesn't.
I'm not referring to that. I was referring to actually some of the things that you mentioned in terms of curtain or drains or other things that
But
may
it's
be.
only going to happen if the pool is approved.
Well, I think
Part of the pool
I think maybe you're saying kind of the same thing. What I think needs to happen is, I only received this memo from Mr. Tremelli yesterday. It was only
Right.
forwarded to board members and the applicant and posted online today.
Right.
So nobody's had a lot of time to go over this. Mr. Tremelli's not here at the meeting tonight. I think he can watch the meeting and he can read the transcript, so he hears from the applicants themselves what they're, or not the applicants, I'm sorry, the residents themselves what they're concerned about. And I think he could sort of refine his recommendations or conditions of approval. I don't think that you're necessarily saying they have to be detailed on the plan, but it would be something where if he says you need to put perimeter drains or curtain drains or dry wells, I think it's more him getting a better understanding of the specific concerns, your client getting a better understanding of what the potential conditions would be, so that everybody's sort of comfortable with the engineering review related to stormwater management. But I don't think he's saying put together a full pool application.
Yeah, and I think we're ready to accept the recommendations he's already made, and obviously he'll probably make some additional recommendations to address the concerns that came up this evening. And I think we're willing to do that. We're willing to put a linear drain across the back of the property to pick up any potential overflow from this pool if there's a major storm. If there's that type of storm, I don't know if that drain's going to do anything, to be
Well, but
honest with you. I mean,
do you mind if I keep
Please,
talking?
go ahead. There's nothing under Robert's rules that says I can't say what she said, so,
Okay.
what she said.
So I think sometimes applicants are accustomed to the planning board sort of wholly deferring to our civil engineering consultant to say, you know, we know you can get this to work, so we're gonna approve this subject to such and such a condition. I think in this case, there's still a lot of open-ended things, so what the board is saying is we're gonna keep the public hearing open, just so that we can address some of these concerns much more precisely. And they still might be somewhat open-ended in terms of subject to Joe Tremelli's final review and approval of the building permit drawings or the construction drawings, but I think it's just pinning these things down a little bit more specifically is what you're looking for, correct?
Yes, but you have a board full of attorneys. We don't speak that concisely.
I
We're not
want
gonna
to
make it-
go on record, I'm not an attorney.
Well said, Mr. Cahalan. So, having clarified what I was referring to, we're going to leave the public hearing open on this matter, and I'm going to make a motion to adjourn this to the next meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Cahalan, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So just to clarify, so I just need to wait for Joe's amended letter to figure out what we might...
I will coordinate with you
we'll
and
talk.
Joe,
Okay.
and perhaps he can come and visit the site, your properties, if you don't mind doing that. So I think so he can understand field conditions and site conditions, and I think whatever he, I trust his judgment in terms of what's appropriate and necessary, and so
Thank you, even though you violated Robert's rules by,
I keep doing
after I
that.
adjourn that.
I'm sorry.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Mrs. Yuli. We're lucky to have you as, in terms of being in charge of our planning and building, so I thank you for doing that. So, having adjourned this to the next meeting,
Great. Thank you.
I thank you for your presentation and your time, and I'm going to now make a motion to adjourn the meeting in its entirety to the June meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Kalen, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.